was on paternity leave, and he's joined us. Anyway, welcome this afternoon to the day 2 of the 49th annual SGU Founders Week program in Wocekiye. I want to again extend a special shout out to our relatives and friends and guests out there in cyberspace. I actually had some emails come to me this morning with people that are watching us, and as we talked about different developments that were shaping up here at Cancega University, they had good comments and good suggestions. We want to start out this afternoon's program in a good way, so if you please stand, and we'll ask the drum Rocking K to offer a prayer song. Beautiful songs, beautiful singing. Makola. Marty makes room for them. Guided you boys well, your talents. Well, for those that are just walking in, we'd like to ask you to come forward and sit and be part of the circle here, if you will. We know that the weather's been somewhat of a barrier and challenge for some of the people, but we are live streaming for those that can't make it, and we also have an international audience that's following, and as I alluded to earlier, we've been getting some good hits on YouTube, so from around the world. As I mentioned earlier, this is day 2 of the 49th Annual Founders Week Forum. Yesterday we opened things up with a full day of discussion and dialogue regarding Lakota traditions, culture, language, and spirituality. Had great participation last night with the fun night by all reports. We actually had a regalia making workshop yesterday. They were making ribbon skirts for youngsters, and Denise Winstar is taking a lead on that. She kind of gave a report this morning and said, yeah, there was another good turnout, and people really enjoying those type of community-based educational activities. So we're, like I said, happy that we can do that today. This afternoon's discussion is going to be on education, and we're going to begin with some remarks by the president, but the students, we want to ask you a few things, not to put you on notice, but we're checking up at the next chapter of tribal nation building, the future of the Sichongo Oyate, as well as Cancega University. And we're at a really interesting point and crossroads, if you will. Centega's 50th anniversary is coming up in 18 months. We're after an accreditation, self-study, a comprehensive. We're in a strategic planning mode. This Friday, we're celebrating the 25th anniversary of federal legislation that bestowed land-grant status on tribal colleges and universities. And we just have a lot of good things that are happening. We will have some reports on some of our academic programming later on in our program. But the intent, again, is to try to get stakeholder input, especially from our young people, especially from our elders and people that work in the field, to talk about the future with best practices, approaches, ideas. But it all boils down to what our young people want. You're the future. The fact that you're here means you're already leaders. And this world is going to belong to you. And as we talk about each generation of our tribal members, you know, right now we're with a group called Generation Z, who are the offspring of the millennials. And Generation Z students are very different from their grandparents in some respects when it comes to education. And quite frankly, we need to make some changes in terms of how we deliver education, how we think about education, and how we prepare our people for either a college education or a career pathway, career education. And undercurrent of all this is remaining who we are as Native people, Lakota people, and retaining our identity and being able to define that on our own terms. And you'll hear President Bordeaux talk about that. So right now, I do want to invite President Bordeaux up to give some opening remarks here. Youngsters, this gentleman right here is the longest serving president of any college and university in the country. 46 going on 47 years. Put your hands together and give it up for Dr. Lionel Bordeaux.
Thank you, Phil. One minor correction. 47 years going on to 48. Hard to believe. I was 32 years old when I come here, and less than 2 weeks I'll be 79. Give my whole adult life to education here on Rosebud, but it's Beautiful choice, beautiful challenge, beautiful reward. Nothing like working in education when you're building and preparing youth and family and relatives and a nation for the future. Good to see all of you. Dan, congratulations on fatherhood. As Phil said, my name is Lionel Bordeaux, the president here at SGU. I had a very unique recruitment. Normally you're hired by a board of some kind, a committee appointed. In my case, I was finishing up my PhD, my doctorate at University of Minnesota. I had everything done. Had my coursework pretty well done, dissertation done, and just a few things to tweak, and I was waiting for graduation. Phone rang, and the gentleman introduced himself as Stanley Redbird Sr. He said, I have a message for you. I need to know where you live so I can come over, talk to you. I didn't know him, but I gave him my address. He come over, and I was very humbled and stunned with his message. I was born and raised in the town of White River, Swift Bear. Born in a log cabin in a blizzard along the river. Graduated from St. Francis. Enjoyed St. Francis when I was there. I was very fortunate. I was a starting center for the 1957-58 basketball team. Most of my partners are in the spirit world. But we had a good team. I think we had 19-7 record that year. But we enjoyed it. But at University of Minnesota, it's real fine-looking gentlemen, all dressed in cowboy outfit, gold outfit, hat all the way down to the boots. Told me that he was there to see me and that he started a tribal college and the reasons why he started it. And he was looking for a young person who had academic training, but more importantly, could speak the Lakota language. He said we had a lot of elders who spoke the language, and the mandates of what the institution was to do, he needed the support of the people. And so he had designed the institution with medicine men. And he called upon medicine men to help design this institution. Stanley, very heavy into prayer and ceremony, and greatly relied upon spirituality to do what he needed to do. And he asked two individuals to hold ceremonies, the late Frank Pickett Penn and Robert Steed. And what I was told was that through these ceremonies, the spirit world told him to come and look me up and to tell me that I was to be the next president at Indigneous University. And so Stanley come to see me and he said, these are my instructions. I was 10 years working with the Bureau of Indian Affairs. I graduated and I could not find work here on the Rosebud. So I was hired on with the BIA north of Santa Fe, New Mexico, on a Hickory Apache reservation. I was placed in charge of the Hickory dormitories, working with Navajo and Apache students, being a Boy Scout master and whatever else went with it. Stanley said, "You're to resign." I was just recently, at that time, selected as one of the 5 individuals throughout the country to be trained for a future managerial position with the BIA. I wanted to be the Aberdeen area director and retire with a stint as the Rosebud superintendent on the way. Stanley said, "Yeah, that's not going to be the way. Those are not there for you. In fact, you are to resign your employment with the BIA. And you're to withdraw from the University of Minnesota. You're not to graduate." And I'm looking at this guy. I'm 32 years old and I've got 4 little children. Debbie, the oldest, sitting back here. They were all 4 and under at one time. And I'm thinking, my goodness, my whole life, I've planned it out, I have it ready here, and this man is telling me that he's here and he's changed my plans for my future. But he said, "You have 2 weeks. Talk it over with your family, and then let me know, and we'll make plans." I went home and talked to my wife, Barbara Clome, from here, and she said, "If that's our calling, that's what we'll do." So I resigned my BIA position, and I withdrew from University of Minnesota, and I come home. First tribal election, I was fired. Stanley was fired. Sherry Redowl, sitting over here, was our first employee. She was fired. The college was removed from the Board of Regents, placed under the tribal council, what they call receivership. And I asked Stanley, I said, "Hey," I said, jokingly, I said, "I had a good life until I met you. What do we do now?" He said, "We have to get our school back. We told our people about hope and opportunity through education." He said, "We have to get our school back." I said, "How do we do that?" He said, "We'll march on tribal government." Well, Lakotas weren't marching. Martin Luther King was marching in the South. But Lakotas, we weren't marching. But we did that day. And we marched into the tribal council chambers after marching round and round. And there was a lengthy discussion from about 4 o'clock in the afternoon till 2 o'clock in the morning. Tribal council, give us our college back. Stanley said, "You get on the tribal council. Don't ever let this happen again." Plus, he said, that tribal council will be your best teacher. Everything that the people experience during the day will come before the tribal council at some point. He said, "You bring the college up accordingly as to the needs of the people." And so I did. I sat there. I was a tribal council person for 14 years. And like you said, it was a tremendous teacher. Everything that we do, you experience on the tribal council. But the mandates are things that Stanley talked about, and I was inaugurated by medicine men. medicine men sat in a circle like this. Young girls sitting out here with a pipe. These medicine men talked to me one by one in quadrants of 4. And there was a medicine man in charge, Chief Eagle Feather. And they each told me who they were, what they wanted to see for the future, what education should be on the Rosebud, and what I needed to be an educational leader. But they told me, every quadrant of 4, she's going to extend that pipe to you. And if there's something that you can't accept or don't agree with, get up and walk away. But if you stay there, she'll pull that pipe back. And the next group of medicine men will talk to you. And this eventually went into a complete circle. And Chief Eagle Feather said, now listen to everybody. If there's something that somebody said, and you don't feel you can do it, get up and walk away. But if you stay there, she's going to take this pipe and give it to you. And you take that pipe, and that pipe will be that institution's guide and protector. And if you ever opt to leave your position, you've got to go back and retrace your steps and have a ceremony where you go and tell the spirit world that you're going to remove yourself as the president. He said, that's part of this ceremony where you're being inaugurated. It was a beautiful ceremony. We had it reenacted here a few years ago with the Albert White Hat. But the mandates were interesting and challenging. I'm not aware of any other educational institution in the country that has the mandates that this institution has. Normally you go to a school, you're prepared for employment. You go and you find employment after you graduate. Yes, that's part of this institution. We have a lot of our graduates out there in various fields. But additionally, this institution has been charged as an institutional activist to strengthen the Ikiciyuskinpi Eyapi, strengthen the nation in every aspect that affects the quality of our daily life, whether it's culture, whether it's economics, whether it's education, whether it's tribal governance, whether it's health, family, housing, youth, elders, energy, technology. This institution is charged with strengthening every one of those areas. And that's why we hold these forums. We have a tremendous staff here. We have a very committed student body. But we also appeal to the people, to the tribal entities, to the tribal programs, to come forth with your ideas. You know the needs. You've been out there, you've been working with these. Come to these forums with your needs. Tell us who you are, what you're doing, what your plans are for the future, so we can incorporate these into our plans, and we can develop the proper courses and degrees to complement the needs and what it is that we need to strengthen the Ikiciyuskinpi Eyapi. Beautiful mandates, yes, challenging, but that's who we are. We inherited an educational system that is not us. You don't see the truth about who we are in our educational system for the most part today. It's not in history books. You don't see what happened in the East Coast, the oppression, the colonialization that took place, where complete tribal nations were removed through infested blankets, where militias circled tribal camps, built fires, and when the tribal people ran, they were shot down. You don't see these, you don't read about these in our history books. But that's the truth of who we are. There are tribal nations who lived along the East Coast who are no longer in existence. Millions and millions and millions of tribal people lived at one time. Over the years, we were reduced to a few thousand. We're slowly making a comeback. I don't know what it is today, a little over 1 million. We owned a whole continent. And through thievery, that land was taken from us. Yes, we do have treaties. But these treaties come the first time we put boundaries around ourselves and put it on a piece of paper with laws. You can do this, you cannot do that. But our people survived. Some in that survival were assassinated. Our leader, Chief Spotted Tail, assassinated by a fellow Lakota. Crazy Horse, held by a friend so he could run a bayonet into him, kill him. Sitting Bull, killed by Indian police. An eradication of our leadership. Wounded Knee, Sand Creek, all these places where large sizes of our people, kids at Wounded Knee, babies removed from their mother's arms with a bayonet. As those babies were thrown up in the air and come down, they bayoneted them again. You don't see history books telling this. But this is what our people went through. And here we are. We're still here today. And this is what Stanley talked about. We have to strengthen who we are, because much of what was given us or we retained is not who we are. That we have to define and articulate who we want to be and not who somebody else wants us to be. That's our role and responsibility. We had a well-known politician on television here one night talking about the woes of Indian country. Start talking about terrible statistics. And then he said on the Rosebud Sioux Reservation in South Dakota, he was on national television talking about Rosebud. He said they lead the world in suicides. I remember my brother-in-law, Charlie Clome, getting very upset. He said, how dare he tell the world who we are as Sichunkus? That's our responsibility. We should tell the world who we are. But we should prepare ourselves, reorganize, and do an intellectual study and review and analysis of who we are. Study our legislation, study our policies. What's good, what's bad for us? Let's throw out the bad. Let's bring in the good. Let's create a new world for ourselves. Let's create a new warrior, a new woman. Focus on who we want to be. Create another educational system. We inherited this system. Stanley said redefine and redesign an educational system. Who's to say you have to go to school 12 years to be a high school graduate? You have to go to school 4 years to get a baccalaureate. Stanley said we have the opportunity, we have the sovereignty, we have the ability to create new legislation that tells us who it is that we want to be, what we want to design, that we can come up with a system that we want. Who says we have to be measured in terms of age and grade and degrees? We should have one educational system here on the Rosebud. Yes, you can keep St. Francis and Todd County and White River and the different names, but there should be a general curriculum as to who we want to be so that we don't leave anything out. If you transfer from one school to the next, you don't lose anything. That focus is still there. That direction is still there. That's what Stanley had in mind when he created this institution and other tribal colleges. We're here to create a new educational system, but we need everybody's help. Every one of you has an idea as to what you see that educational system being. And these forums are set up to give us the opportunity to express ourselves so that we can listen and you tell us what it is that you don't like about the system, but better yet, the one that you would like to see. We'd like to see dual enrollment where you can be a high school graduate, but at the same time go to college. And maybe on high school graduation, you receive both your high school diploma as well as at least a 2-year college degree. And if some student really wants to challenge themselves, and we have that kind of intellectual mind, then maybe you could even graduate high school and graduate a 4-year degree. That would be something to see. But it's doable. Would require a lot of work, a lot of hard work, you bet. But it is doable. And we should at least have that opportunity to do that. But college shouldn't be the only choice. Students should have choices. There should be vocational choices, career choices. In fact, you ought to be able to go in and out. You shouldn't have to adhere or follow just one path. You ought to be able to get off here, get back on, go another direction, come back. Student learning, student directed. These are the things that await us. Yeah, they're difficult. They're probably way futuristic, but we have to be thinking about them. Because we have the intellect and we have the opportunity to do it. We need to bring our will and that skill that we have, and we all need to be at the table, all the stakeholders, the little one on up to the old one. We all need to be involved in the planning. We have so much to offer. The world awaits the spirituality, the strength that we have as tribal people. We have that opportunity. And the Creator gave it to us. Yeah, it's been temporarily tampered with and removed here and there, but we still have it. And we still have it through prayer and ceremony, through ancestry. That's still there. That's why these institutions were created, to maintain that, to retain that, to gain that. It's good to see all of you here, because we need your help. Economics, why should we be one of the poorest counties, reservations in the United States, when we have so much intellect and we have so much land? Newt Gingrich, that time he was talking about us, he talked about our poor health. We have land that we can grow any crops for nutrition that we want. We have that ability. We can bring back the buffalo. We can bring back the horse. The Black Hills belongs to us. If we had a plan and we approached the forest department, we could get some of that land back where our people could live. Our young people could own businesses, could have a home in the hills. We have that opportunity, but we need to sit down and put it on a piece of paper and have prayer and ceremony, and then take it to those people who are in charge and say, hey, the spirit of our ancestry still lives in these hills. We're here to pray with them, to talk with them, and to ask them to help get our land back. We may not get it all back, but we can get a sizable portion of it back. That awaits us. I may not see it in my lifetime. I don't know that my children or even my grandchildren will, but it's coming. It's coming. It's happening. And our founders, our leaders who brought us here, they're still there. They're still in us. They're still in our blood. They're still in our thoughts. They're still in our prayer. And there are ceremonies where we can sit down together and bring them spiritually, just like they were at the ceremony and brought me here and kept me here now going on, finishing up 47 years and put me on my 48th year. We all have it. It's in each and every one of us. And with that, Phil's already looked at his watch. He shook it. He looked at it 4 times. I used to be a starting center at St. Francis. You have to have peripheral vision. You got to know what's happening back here. I'm looking this way, but I can see him. I don't know if he's doubting his own time, but he shook his watch last time to see if it's still working. So I take it as a clue that I better hush my lips and stop my lip flapping and sit down and turn us over to you all and let you talk. We want to hear you. Thank you for your coming, but please give us the benefit of who you are and who you want to be, and tell us what it is that we need to do to strengthen who we are. Love you all. Thank you.
Thank you, President Bordeaux. We have a list of invited guests, and we'll get to them in a little bit. I see Roger Bordeaux back there, Interim Superintendent, St. Francis Indian School, looking the other way. I see the Rosebud Sioux Tribal Education Department's here, so I'm glad they showed up. I want to take advantage of the leadership that the President talked about. So Cheryl and Dan, you want to come up here? And we have, we framed kind of a dialogue that, as you heard President Bordeaux say, we need to hear from you. Are these your, Maurice, are these your students? Thank you. Thank you for bringing them. This is really, really important. And again, I will reemphasize, this isn't the last time we're going to do this. There'll be follow-up based on the stakeholder input that we're going to be getting. So we'll be reaching out to K through 12 students, even the little ones. Our Takoshas, they have ideas, and they've got some things to say. So there'll be follow-up meetings here as we shape this next chapter. So right now, I know Cheryl Madera, she's the academic vice president, and Dan Seibel, her sidekick. He's dean of students and also serves as the assessment coordinator in academics. And Dr. Jim will put you on standby here in terms of the WINHEC and the Institute of Teaching and Learning. So with that, Dan and Cheryl.
You already did part A of us introducing ourselves. One thing you learn about being a teacher, you have to be very flexible and ready to go. So we had activities planned for high school students. We're very happy to see a lot of leadership and college students in the room today, so we quickly revamped our activity. As Provost Baird said, my name is Cheryl Medeiros. I am the Department Chair of Education and Vice President for Academic Affairs.
Good afternoon. My name is Dan Seibel. I'm the Dean of Education here at Sinte, and I'll ask your apologies because my dangly throat thing is way back in my throat. Like, it's weird. And so if I'm talking weird, that's why. Forgive me. But I am excited to be able to have a conversation with all of you today. We've got some great minds in the room. And as Cheryl and I were talking about what kind of conversation could be really beneficial to have with so many people representing different organizations here, it brought me back to, as a principal, I worked at Crazy Horse School and was a principal there for 4 years, and I often felt like we were kind of on an island, an educational island, where we had ideas and we had things we were doing, and it felt disconnected from everyone else around us. Now, I realize that's Pine Ridge, so Rosebud isn't like that, but this is a really cool opportunity to share the different successes that different organizations are having, and I think maybe even more important, the lessons that people are learning along the way, and to share them so that we at the college and at the education department can hear the wins that you are having over at Tribal Ed or over at St. Francis. So what we'd like to do is we're going to invite anyone who represents an organization that has to do with education to also join us up here at this table. So I heard Dr. Bordeaux's here, so we'd love to have you. I know we have Tribal Ed up here, and we have some people from the college. Anyone else that would like to share a little bit about in any kind of educational organization that you're working with, we would like to have you come up here to these tables. We're going to ask a series of quick questions and pass the mic around no more than 5 minutes, and I might even have Roger put a timer up for us to kind of quickly share some of these different thoughts that we have on these questions. Students, we'd like you to stay up here too because we have some questions for you as well. So, I didn't see any movement, so I'm assuming that no one back there in the audience has anything they'd like to share or is from an organization. Can you call anyone out, Cheryl? Is there anyone back there?
Dr. Roger, he would call me up. If you would join our group, please. Anyone else that wants to share or participate, please come forward. Students, SGU faculty.
And so the goal of this in the next hour, hour and a half, is to quickly be able to hear insights and lessons learned from different organizations that are also involved in education. And hopefully when we leave at the end of this hour, we all walk away with a new idea of the good work that's going on around us in organizations that we may not have heard of, and also can be thinking about ways that we can increase our impact by working together with other organizations. So thank you. So we're gonna kick this off. We're gonna try to do it fast. So we're gonna do this whip around style. And so whip around means it's a hot mic, you only answer the quick question, and then you pass it on. So don't feel like you're on the spot and you gotta come up with something elaborate. And so the first whip around question to train yourself is to just introduce your name and the organization or department that you work with. So if you're a student, you would say, here's my name, I'm a student at SGU, and you would pass it on. So this is a quick practice round because the next questions get a little denser, and we're shooting for brief highlights. So I think we can start. Yeah, yep. That's fine. Actually, I'm going to make Cheryl go first so she can show us how to do it. Use your teacher voice, Cheryl.
So I don't need the mic. Cheryl Medeiros, Vice President of Academic Affairs, Santiago University.
I'm Dan Seibel, Dean of Education, new father of a really handsome son. I don't know where he got it from. And I work at SGU in the Education Department.
Lionel Bordeaux, President.
I used to say my name is Tom Daschle, and then I started dating myself. None of the young kids know who Tom Daschle is. I'm Phil Baird.
Wayne Boyd, I'm the treasurer for the tribe.
Travis Whirlwind Soldier, I work in the Provost office, SGU.
Marlise Whitehead, I work with SGU Wicawotapi.
Sherry Redall, retired educator.
Brianne Herman, student at SGU, and I work for the Rosebud's Tribe Office of Legislative Affairs. Hattie Dunham, student at SGU, also an entrepreneur.
Jim Trozi, Emacha Polona. Misha LLSGU, Wash Chamo.
Rosemary Claremont, Tribal Ed.
Cindy Young, Tribal Ed Director.
Cheryl Warren Soldier, Tribal Ed, Lakota Tuahe Coordinator.
Debbie Wardle, Vice President, Student Services, SGU.
My name is Viviana Running. I'm a part-time student at SGU. I also work at TLE.
My name is Badr Chaudhary, but I go by Bobby, and I'm a student at SGU.
My name is Ryan Whiting, and student at SGU.
My name is James LaPointe. I'm a student at SGU.
My name is Maurice Heinert. I'm a faculty in Business Education Department.
My name is Sean Young, and I'm a student at SGU, and I'm an accountant at Rosebud Casino.
Oh,
Sean Whitehawk, I'm a student at SGU.
Roger Bordeaux, St. Francis Indian School.
All right, that was excellent. A round of applause for doing that one very well. You all get a gold star. So now we're going to jump into a couple questions. And so here's what I'd like to do. If you're part of an organization and there's multiple people from your organization here, you're going to answer together. So Tribal Ed, definitely, I'm going to have you guys discuss your answer and have one person share out. Some of these questions, when it comes around to you, you might not have anything to share, and in that case, we definitely just pass the mic on. If you do have something to share that you think would benefit the group, then we want to hear it. We're going to ask that everyone keep their answers to about 3 minutes. So the goal is to really, we're going to give you some think time after we ask the question, for you to really think about what is the most valuable thing to share for this group, and to kind of nail it down so that when you have the mic, it goes pretty quickly. First question.
So if you are a part of an organization, What is one lesson your organization has learned in the past year that you want to share with the group? If you are a student, what is one lesson that you have learned in the past year? And remember, organizations with multiple members come up with an answer. Give you a couple minutes and then we'll start. We're just going to go back and forth here.
Is it possible, Roger, to put up maybe like a 1 or 2 minute timer? So this is a classic teacher strategy. You got 2 minutes to nail down your answer, maybe jot down some notes, so when you have the mic, and we'll start it after 2 minutes, we'll point to you, Dr. Bordeaux, and you're going to share briefly a lesson that your organization has learned in the past year that is beneficial for everyone. And I'm going to make Cheryl go first. So after 2 minutes, we'll start with Cheryl. Here's your think time. So as a reminder, you're thinking about what you might want to share out, and then you're also thinking if you don't have anything to share that you might just pass the mic, and there's no shame in that. Yeah, he's got a timer up there. Can I see a raise of hands if you need more time? Does anyone need more time? Okay, we're going to... You want a few more seconds? Okay, great. Then we'll wait these last 40 seconds and then we'll jump into answers. Okay, so here we go. Again, I want you to focus in your response on what is the lesson your organization learned this past year, and especially maybe thinking about how it's something we all can benefit from. So first we're going to go to Cheryl. Cheryl, in 3 minutes or less, would you explain one lesson that your education department learned this year? And then maybe even think about how that applies to the broader group of education in Rosebud.
One lesson throughout the year from the SGU Education Department is the value of partnerships. And as we look around, our Education Department has had the great opportunity to partner with almost all of the entities that are here. Also, the partnership and the collaboration with adjunct faculty. We operate our entire department, undergrad department, solely on adjunct faculty, and the value that they bring to our program by being out there with students every single day and bringing that experience into the classroom. So as we prepared for our review, we were nervous about that. How are we going to say we're a department with no full-time faculty at the undergrad level, and the positive comments that came back. So our lesson is the value of partnership that we want to continue, and the value of all that people can bring to our program.
How about a wild round of applause for Cheryl Medeiros? Okay. Oh man, seriously a wild crew here. Okay, Dr. Bordeaux, one lesson that you've learned and that you'd like to share with the group from the past year. We got 3 minutes on the timer.
I think the main thing is that change is extremely hard, I've been there for like 6 months trying to create opportunities to do things differently, and there's a lot of talk about wanting to do stuff differently, but when you get down to it and say we're going to do this, they seem to be finding reasons why they think what they're doing right now is okay. But in reality, when you look at the data that's available for the success that we have with our children, it's not there. So we got to figure out ways to create a change process that's positive, but also speeds it up a little bit. Because I still think it's going to take 3 or 4 years to do everything differently that we want to do. But we have to figure out a way to do it incrementally. And hopefully that the changes that we do will make a difference and make the whole system better.
That's a really valuable thought. I think something we can all take back, because those small steps, incremental, are ones that are going to create lasting change versus just flying off the handle and making a bunch of changes. Awesome. We're going to go on to the next one. Student, right? Okay, do you have a personal lesson that you've learned this year you want to share?
As an SGU student, I learned that the tribe, looking for jobs, employment, they don't really utilize our students and the potential we have. Like, I'm a business student, and there's so many good ideas there. That there's just no support for the students to go forward after we graduate. What's there for us? And if we try to change something that's been like so long, it's been this way, and if we try to change it, you know, nobody's don't want that change. We're gonna be met with like negative or get pushed away. And our students need support. We need people to support our ideas and to back us up. A lot of times when students want to do things, it's no, no, no. But I remember Mike Bench, when he was around, he's really supportive of anything that we tried to bring forward for our students, our community, and to try to use my degree as a business student. What's out there for me? We get this degree, but there's nothing else. I know contracts, grants, those are a big thing now on the reservation. That runs a lot of our programs. But to this day, nobody ever that I know of from SGU really went forward with that. And we need some help to start applying those things we learned here. Almost out of time, so I better be quiet here. But yeah, that's what I got. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sage.
Hocoka na Lionel, University na Woglakapi. Just want to extend my thanks for giving us opportunity to Woglakapi. One thing I learned about working with organizations is they're pretty incredible monsters to try to work with. Mainly because you have to overcome status quo and convincing others that there's a better way of doing business. So one thing I looked at with the organization I'm working with is, how do we know that, what I've learned is, how do we know that what we're doing is working? How do we know that? What tells us this, that? What tells us those things? And so what we're able to start is an initiative to focus on maybe some priorities. We have 5 of them at our school that we work at. There's probably more if we extended it out to the entire organization. But focusing on one priority with the team maybe focusing in content areas and then taking maybe a couple questions on how you're going to answer. How do we know that what we're going to do is going to improve the wellness or the academic progress of our students, by using the data from the state data, but also our own inside surveys, our analysis of our students' learning, to help us then paint a picture of how we know that what we're doing is effectively moving our children in the front. So that's what I learned of how we can actually then tell a story. The story then doesn't come from our mouths, it comes from what we do in our actions. And so what you end up having is you have a nice picture of the efforts that we put forward. And so then it clarifies, why do we keep doing things over and over again that are not working? So it puts it out in the front so everybody sees it, so that we can no longer do those same practices, and we start to eliminate them and start to address what our students really do need. And through that process, when we create that narrative or that story, then it becomes a piece that we can share with our community. If we begin to share with our relatives what we're doing in our school, then maybe our relatives will come back to our schools and be part of it and help us with closing the achievement gap, and even helping with progressing in our economic development and our community, the strength to really make our people stronger. So that's what I learned this year, and I'm hoping that as we move forward that we continue. But it shouldn't end 1 year after you have findings. It needs to continue that process. So that's Woglakapi.
I thought maybe what Sage would share is graduating from an organization. He graduated with his master's in August, and I would like to have you all welcome him as an adjunct professor for the education department at Sandeglashka, in addition to his job at Todd County. Welcome aboard.
I'm Maurice Heinert, and from an organizational level, faculty at the business department. One lesson I think that we've learned is that, following up on Dr. Bordeaux's, is that change is really hard. We've had a lot of changes that happened to us this past year, and had to learn a lot of lessons to go on with that. One of the things that I've personally learned, and I should have known this long ago, but it's one of the lessons I personally learned, is that we can't control others. We can't control what they do or what they won't do. So we need to start that change, take a look at ourselves first, and what can we do to make the changes that need to happen. So be open and be willing to make the changes.
Are we paying you as a motivational speaker or what? Because that was awesome. Okay.
Well, thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, again, I'm Bobby, and I'm going to be the group speaker from our edge. So we all definitely come from different, I'm a freshman this year, but some of them have been freshmen last year and they're sophomores, so we kind of had a lot of ideas. So one of them, we all actually have some of them common, and one of them was to be organized, because we learned that if we're organized and everything, that leads us to build up on top of everything. So if we organize one thing, we're going to go ahead and do that in the future, and that's going to help us, be completely, organized in everything that we do after that. Something else we learned was to be prepared at all the times. That, you get things thrown at you all the time. And to be prepared is always good. Working hard is always there. It's, working hard. Also, we learn to be attentive, and last but not least, communication is very, very essential. It's one of the fundamental things, but as adults, we forget about it. We don't communicate within each other very much. And if we communicate, then that's ideas coming every day, everywhere. So I think that was very important, so we should communicate it too a lot. And we should also have forums and also activities and stuff like that hosted anywhere, wherever where a lot of people can come together and talk and do anything like that. Have, just that way ideas would be just thrown around everywhere. Positivity, just be positive, I guess that's what we all learned. If you're positive, you're gonna see the good things, and just commit to whatever we do. We just try to get the best out of it. And that's going to be us. Thank you.
Awesome. I think that's such a powerful word for all of our teachers and professors out here, anyone who works in education, to get a glimpse into the mind of a student and see these are the things that they're learning and that they're working on, and what can we do as their leaders in the classroom to help support that. So thank you guys for sharing. That's great. Well, then why was it like number 6 or 7? Should have been way up there. Thank you. Who has the mic now?
Okay. I have.
Tribal
Can you
Ed.
hear me?
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. So some of the things that we talked about are some of the things that Cheryl had talked about, and some of the stuff Sage did, and Ms. Antoine. I can't remember her name real quick. But on partnerships, one of the things that we learned is to work more closely with our partners and collaborate with them on different things. And we've worked over the years with Marlies, and not so much lately, but those collaborations with other programs is what strengthens us. And we started working on this program, this higher ed program called the Sichungu College Success Coalition, and that's working with the state, the college, and the entities at the schools and the tribal, at the tribal level. But one of the things also is that we try to work real close with our tribal programs, but we see that we need to work even closer with them, because we've been reaching out and working with more outside areas, and it's real hard to get all the things done that we need to work on. And we talked about change. Different people talked about change. Roger, I forgot Roger. Roger talked about change and how hard change is, and we've been trying to make change with our education system, with the college, and with our tribal school. And I do appreciate Roger's the superintendent there, acting superintendent there, and we've been able to work a little bit closer and make a little bit more progress. And he talked about that. And with Rosemary here from my office is working on a grant out of the former line office that allows us to do that work with our schools. Primarily our school is St. Francis Indian School is our tribal school, but we also work with Todd County real close. We work with Sage in the program, the grant that he's working under, and we've worked with him in the past. And with White River, we had a partnership with White River, and we're getting that back closer together again. And some of the work from the grant that Sage works with, that NACA group, we've attended those, me and Rosemary, and we've learned different ways that we could achieve our goals with our tribal schools. Because our primary goal is to get our kids to graduate high school and have success after a life after high school. And we need to, it's made us this year to realize that we need to update our own vision statement, mission statement. So with all the people, the partners and what we've been doing, we've learned a lot of that. Done my time. I guess that'll be it.
Thank you, Tribal Ed.
Okay, my name is Hattie Dunham. I'm a student and I'm an entrepreneur. The lesson I learned this past year, well, I'm a graduate from Indigneous University. I have a bachelor's in liberal arts, minor in Lakota studies and fine arts. And I was really happy when I got my degree. I actually cried because I thought it meant job security, and that's not true. All it did was give people a reason not to hire me. I went from not having enough credentials to being overqualified. But I started out as a single parent, and I ended up getting married, and I raised my children. And I guess what I found out this last year is cultural competence is very important. Cultural competence got me a contract job in Minnesota. I made $57,000 in 6 months because of my cultural competence, because of what I know of who I am and where I am and the plants and all these things. I was a survey monitor, and I helped them identify cultural artifacts that's coming down line 3. I helped the Fond du Lac tribe identify cultural things. And also communication. Communication's real important. Like, this exercise gives me anxiety because I'm a Lakota woman and I don't speak like this. Yeah. We are informal speakers and we speak long, and this gives me anxiety, just like education and their formal sentence structure testing gives me anxiety. I don't do good in tests. Also personal sovereignty. I have personal sovereignty, because even though I don't get hired for jobs that I believe I would do great at, I don't let that hinder me. It does get me depressed at times, but my personal sovereignty is that I make my own money. I'm able to pay my bills. I'm able to take care of my children, my grandchildren. And that's what personal sovereignty is. And also money and economy. With that $57,000, I paid for my children's bills and their needs, and I still went back to work and lived off of $50 until my next payday. So I learned that money can't buy you happiness. You don't need money to be happy. You don't need money for everything, but it does, you do need it for gas. You do need it for basic things. So even though I made that kind of money, I also learned that I don't need that kind of money. I can get by with very little and still be happy and still be able to do what I want. So those are my lessons, and they're very valuable. So I hope I do better this year with my entrepreneurial business. I'm trying to get out of consignments and do more of my work and let people buy what I make. Thank you.
Thank you, and I also want to thank you for, thank you for being willing to say that this format of talking is uncomfortable and it is kind of anti-traditional, but I appreciate everyone seeing it as an exercise where hopefully we can get a lot of good sharing happening quickly. But I appreciate you saying that, because I think that's important to recognize that this is not going to capture all the things that we could if we had more time and we could be more informal and learn from each other through relationships instead of this kind of whip around. But hopefully we can get something out of it. So thank you very much.
I'm speaking for SGU Woglakapi, bringing the family back to life. And one of the big lessons we learned this summer, this past year, over the last 2 years, we had 14 weeks of horse camps, horse culture camps for children, some for boys, some for girls, different age groups. And the last summer when we did this, we surveyed all the children and we surveyed the caregivers about the effectiveness and what more they wanted. And so what we learned was that the 60 children that attended this summer all wanted the horse camps to continue. The thing that they didn't like about them was that they ended. All of them said that across the board. I didn't like it because they ended. And when we asked them, do you want horse programs in your communities? They all said yes. So what we saw there was that reconnection with all of creation. That's one of our goals, to help them reestablish those relationships, and they really want it. So as a result of the surveys that we did, we're working on a program now to move that forward so that we can start some horse programs in the communities and train people to work with those. So in the next few months, you'll be hearing about that. We're hoping we can get it started in a couple of months, and we have the resources ready. So we're just putting it together. So that's what we learned, that our children will tell us what they want. And then the other thing I learned was when the tribal council met at St. Francis Indian School, I only heard a little part of it, but a young man stood up and said, "What are you doing for us?" And then he repeated himself. He said, "What are you doing for us?" So that's why we're moving forward with this, because we have to respond to those children. They want something from us. So that's what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Again, good afternoon. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to see all of you here. One thing I've learned this past few months is you don't want to make promises you can't keep, like a wall, because everybody's going to suffer. No, just kidding, but as being a part of the council for a long time, one of the things I've learned as new councils come and go is not many of our people that are elected to these positions know a lot about our government, how it works. We talk a lot about change. Change is something that's hard, we all want to do. And I see it hard because the people that are responsible for making these changes don't necessarily know how to do it because they don't know how our government works. And as educational institutions, both lower, middle, and higher, we need to start making that a mandatory part of our curriculum. Otherwise, those of us that are fortunate to be in politics long enough to understand how to make changes, I mean, we've wasted years and years of time that we could be actually doing it when we have to spend time to learn how to do it. And I see this not only in our own tribal government, but I see this with our national government, our state government. If you watch how these people act in their capacities as our leaders that make policy and law for us, you can see very quickly that not many of them truly understand what their roles are, what their duties are, what their responsibilities are. As a result, we get into these kindergarten matches like we are now, over nothing. Whose shoes are bigger than whose? It's crazy. But as educational institutions, you need to help us as legislatures develop laws that would require that these type of items be addressed in our schools at a very early age, not only here locally, but in the state. We've had governors that have visited our tribal office, have negotiated compacts with us, have done a number of things with us that didn't know one thing about us. The governor before last came down during his last couple of years of office, told us he didn't even know where Rosewood was at. This is my first time here, and I'm shocked. I didn't even know where you guys were located. But these are the people that make laws for us. These are the people that tell us how we can live. These are people that have a lot to do with our future. So to me, it's very important that you understand this. That's one thing I've learned. Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess for me, I'll leave the boss to talk about the organization, but for me, I guess not so much learned, but reaffirmed that there's a purpose for everything. Spirits guide things, and it comes even more apparent when we see our relatives and friends crossing over to the other side. And so you become stronger with that, and you become focused on those things that you can make an impact, those things you can't control. They're out there, but I truly believe there's a purpose for everything, and spirits do guide things.
Thank you.
I guess this not only pertains to last year, but really to the 46 years previous to that I've been here president at St. Agnes College, or the number of roles of leadership that I've been in, whether it's here or throughout the country. But it's simply the difficulty to create or develop a movement for the betterment and strengthening of who we are. That is very, very difficult to overcome, as somebody said, the status quo. People, for the most part, even leadership, it's like we don't always believe that we can do something. And so we're kind of content to accept what we have and go along. But we know that in our heart, when we hear Newt Gingrich put any country down the way we heard it and talked about Rosebud per se, you know, that should be a challenge and a clue or the cue for us to move on that. But to overcome the negativity that we have as an obstacle is a tremendous challenge and very, very difficult. When you have Facebook that you don't have to sign your name, you can just sit there and blast somebody and put untruths out there. It's, you know, very, very damaging. But somewhere, you know, you just have to keep going. You can't give up, and because there's, you know, there's a brighter side, and you always have to aim in that direction. And personally, I'm very gratified as to the movement and development of what our visionaries started with tribal higher education, to imagine tribal colleges throughout the country and how they've developed and met those challenges. I remember the first time we went to Washington, D.C. and talked about legislation to secure dollars to try to operate our tribal colleges. I think we only had $200,000 at that time, and now today we're up around 15, 16 million, but still woefully short of what we need. But we could not get anybody to really welcome or recognize us in what we were trying to do. It's like people just, you know, who are you? What do you mean you want tribal colleges? And we were told, seek your own congressional South Dakota delegation. Get their support before you come to us, is what we were told by congressional leadership. So when we went to our own congressional people, you know, they were generous with their time, and one said, you know, Lionel, that's very admirable and honorable that tribal nations are talking about enhancing and preparing for the future through the development of tribal colleges. But he said, you know, you're going about it the wrong way. You know, you Indians are good with your hands. You need to stick with the arts and crafts. And if you really want something meaningful for them reservations, flood them with chicken coops and hog pens. That's your future. You know, the warrior in me wanted to reach out and grab him by the throat. But I remembered in my inauguration by tribal medicine men, they said there's going to be days like this. Don't get mad. Don't get upset. Draw strength from what you were just told and come back a second time stronger. And we did. And it took us 6 years for Congress passed the Tribally Controlled Community College Assistance Act of, what was it, 1978. But something so beautiful and so simple as trying to have a tribal college, we could not get the U.S. Congress for 6 years before they accepted that, and President Carter signed that legislation. So it's doable. It's just that you just have to keep believing. And in terms of belief, I heard a man that helped develop Navajo Community College, and in his talk to us, he said, if you don't remember a word of what I said, just remember the title. If it is to be, it is up to me. That's what you go forward with. Pilamayapalo. Thank you.
One thing I learned is that you have to dress the part, which is why I'm wearing my President Bordeaux vest today. And hopefully that means good things for me this year. We want to jump to our second question. And since we won't be able to we're not going to take a break necessarily. If you need to take a break, go for it, and then jump back in when you get here, and we'd love to keep having your voices. One thing we think is really important, and want to build off what President Bordeaux said about it's easy to get caught up in the hard moments and the negativity and all the challenges a lot of people spoke to. And one way to combat that is to make sure that we as entities that are working towards the same vision and the same mission is to make sure that we're celebrating each other. Because when a teacher at SF has success in the classroom one day, that's good for everybody. When we have success at the college, that's good for everybody. When Tribal Ed has these new scholarships for students, which sounds incredible, that's good for everybody. And we bring each other up by celebrating each other and by encouraging each other. So the next question we're going to do is shorter. It's 2 minutes this time. And here's what we'd like you to respond to. What is one success that you've had this past year that the group is going to benefit from learning about? So I want you to, we're going to give you 1 minute to sit and think within your groups or as an individual. What is one success you've had in the past year that you'd like to share out? And students, it can be a personal success because we all benefit, as students, yeah, we got two. In personal success, we'd like to hear that too. And as an organization, what's something that is better this year or that you've done that you're proud of this year that we can all join in and celebrate? So let's get 1 minute on the timer to jot down ideas of what success you'd like to share. Try to focus on just one that you think would benefit for everyone to hear. Take 10 more seconds. Okay. All right, I'm going to put Cheryl on the spot first. You're going to have 2 minutes, Cheryl, and we'd like you to share one success that you've had in your department this past year that is something we can all celebrate together, and then we're going to hear a rousing round of applause afterwards.
He always sets me up to, yeah, anyway. I want to share two things for Sinte University. Our nursing department underwent a very extensive review by the South Dakota Board of Nursing. The standards are incredibly high, and our nursing program was taken off probation. We were on probation at the university level because you have to have 21 graduates in an X period of time that pass the boards. And with our small numbers, we were able to provide information, small numbers of our nursing program, we were able to provide evidence and data how long that would take, even though we have a very successful nursing program. And the board did adopt that, so it's going to help all nursing programs across the state. So the Board of Nursing did pass Sinte University's nursing program. We're in good standing, as all the other nursing programs are. Yesterday, the South Dakota Board of Regents, now called the Board of Educational Standards, gave us the news from our October review that we received 7 years of accreditation for our teacher education program from the state of South Dakota. I can't thank all of the adjunct people enough, all the people, the support from our president and our provost, and mostly this guy who I can take flat line stuff, I call it, and he can turn it into very colorful graphs and charts that, you know, just blew him out of the water. But our nursing and our education students, will be recognized as coming from programs that are at the top of the standards in the state of South Dakota. So thanks everyone for your support, Tribal Ed, all the people. 2 minutes, I did it.
She did it in 2 minutes. A round of applause for Cheryl and for the programs at SGU. Awesome. Thank you. Dr. Bordeaux, would you share with us a success from this past year?
I guess there's maybe two things. One is real simple, that I was able to convince the people at St. Francis that despite all my faults, I still might be worth some time. And then I think the other thing is that it's been a long time coming, but we were able to finally put together a commission that will accredit tribal schools or any kind of schools. The Commission for Oceti Sakowin accreditation has been accepted and acknowledged by the Bureau, the state government, and also a regional accreditation agency. So we're up and moving, and we started out with 2 schools, and hopefully in 5 or 10 years we'll have 50 or more.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you.
I'll use last night, the family night, I'm gonna use that as success. Deb and Chad support, you know, we got together for our student council, and we invited several tribal programs to bring something positive for the families and especially for the kids, the youth. And Albert Whitehat, I always remember, what he says is, the greatest gift you could give is time of your life. And it was cold and a lot of things going on last night, but these people all came together for the kids. You know, we have hardships out there in our communities, in our homes, our families, but to bring happiness to them, that was really a good thing to see, and to share a prayer with them. There's left brain thinkers and right brain thinkers, and Lakota people, we use the side of the brain that we learn by what we see, by actions, what Sage was talking about. And to show those kids that this is prayer and we could come together and this is who you are, your culture. I think that was a good, really successful event we had last night. And in the future, we want to collaborate with these programs more to bring more activities, events for the communities and for our students. And on student council, that's what I want to do. I'm hoping this is my last semester here. Been here quite a while, but we just want to keep that going, and with the support of Lionel, that was really inspiration. You know, Lionel gave us the green light to do these things, and I was really happy with the outcome with that, and what we could do with that going forward. We could do a lot of good things, and just today, one of our relatives from the Ho Chunk Nation is taking classes here. He's going to start back up the powwow club, and I think that's really a positive thing, bring the culture back here. I think that SGU, for a while, we haven't been doing much of that like we used to in the past. Remember Doris, Leader Charge, Albert Whitehat, Francis Cut, those ones that ain't here no more. They used to have a prayer circle where we'd come together and, you know, when someone's having a hard time or we needed prayers, we want to bring that back also. It's part of one of my goals for student council. And with that, I want to extend like an invitation to the tribal programs and maybe do it monthly. Like they showed us how to do it. They taught us how, Albert and Francis and those ones. They showed us what we need to do and to pray and to put that first. That should be number one. And we need to really bring that back to SGU and just keep that going. And but yeah, that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. That's awesome to hear.
personal goal of mine that I've accomplished in the past year is standing up and making a voice for myself, because being young and throughout the generations there's been oppression, and it really shows in today's generation that there's kids don't want to make a voice and stand up for themselves. So throughout my high school years, I was stayed in the back, never really stood out, and then I've everybody has traumas they go through, and I've learned through my traumas to stand up and keep moving forward, and you can't sit there and reminisce on the past, otherwise you ain't gonna move forward.
That's powerful, thank you.
Hi, Leon Leader Charge. I'm a grad student and also work for the Rosebud Sioux Tribe Legislative Affairs. Lately, some of the things that I've worked with and had gifted with a chance to have experience was a research fellowship grant from the National Institute of Drug Abuse, which I conducted a research project here on the Rosebud. I'd like to thank Marlise and Cheryl for that. In the beginning, they helped me, and the Institutional Review Board here. Through my journey, I learned about the importance of data and research, and basically biostatistics. And one thing that my personal passion is helping the tribe to have our own data infrastructure, basically data sovereignty, where our students are conducting scientific research, and our own people we own our own data. So the third project we worked on that our tribe owns the data is the No Means No. We got implemented here in the school districts with the help of a collaborative partnership with St. Francis, thank you, in Todd County. And the students are learning sexual assault prevention. And also a recent endeavor we're looking at is the Menominee model. It's basically Menominee Nation utilized this Bridges Out of Poverty model to address poverty. And those are some of the important factors, I think, that address suicide prevention, addiction prevention, is poverty and self-determination as a nation of our own people. So those are just some of the things that we like to look at, and hopefully as a nation we can emphasize ourselves doing our own research and at the same time publishing, so we don't have to utilize outside resources to conduct research for us, and also job placement for our institutions here on the reservation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Buffalo. My name is Royal Yellowhawk, and I'd like to express on my part of education. Me and Leon, the legislative affairs, we got a resolution going for the tuition waiver in state schools, and Scott Herman, he sat on the education board for the state, and we went and pushed that through, and it was a Senate bill, and also language, Lakota language. There's also going to be a bill going to be presented, South Dakota recognizing Lakota as a language of one of the languages, and I think that there's many issues as far as Native students and tuition in state schools. My daughter is third year USD and half scholarships and half school loans, and it really takes a toll on the children having that debt after getting their degree. And with that, I think language is important too, also in education. I sat on education committee in 2010, and also got a little bit involved again while on tribal council, pushing the bill, the resolution through for the tuition waiver. Wakan, I'd like to share that much. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Tribal Ed, share a success with us.
We have several, but only I can say one, I guess. Overall could be, I guess, increasing services by, we're now located in a new building with all our programs all together in the same floor, so I know what she's up doing and I know what Truancy's doing, and they're able to work closer. The Lakota Tiwahi Center is an infants and toddlers program that's able to take advantage of our truancy intervention services where they before didn't do that so much. And then that coalition that I mentioned, that Sichungu College Success Coalition, is going to help us find more funding for our students because we don't get very much with our federal program that we share, our contract with SGU. And then the tribe just got a trust fund, I can't remember that guy's name, that we might be receiving like $25,000 a year. Isn't very much, but it's helpful for assistance. I can't remember that guy's name, Wog or something. Yeah, some guy is giving us a trust fund. And then Leon just gave me some paperwork yesterday, and we want to look into that where we might be able to also, so increasing our services through our collaborations.
That's really awesome. Thank you for sharing. And as we continue around the circle, I'd like to invite anyone who's sitting back in the audience that has a success to share from this past year, especially around education, that something that would be powerful for the rest of us to know about. I would like you to, you're welcome to come up here and share as well. There's lots of friendly faces back there I see, so I invite you to as well. Okay, next one.
Okay. A success that I wanted to share was the true understanding of gratitude. I'm really thankful for a lot of things. My life here, I've lived on our reservation my whole life, and I'm really thankful. I'm thankful for all the people that I've gotten to watch commit their lives to, and the things that I've learned from that. I really pay attention. I like coming to things like this because I always try to utilize that information in whatever I do. I'm also, another success is learning that I can maintain my $50,000 lifestyle on my own. I learned how to do budgets and learned how to manage my time and how many things I need to create with my own hands to maintain a $50,000 lifestyle, a $30,000 lifestyle, whichever. That's one of my successes, and I just think that there's so many people here on the reservation that could benefit from that information and have faith in themselves. And another success is giving back to the community is priceless. I can always share. It doesn't cost a thing. I can always share what I've learned, and I like doing that. I like fellowship, and so do other people. And I think that, you know, I've been listening all the time, and it frustrates me how we always talk about being traditional and cultural, but we don't practice that. We don't practice that at any level. You know, we had Lakota teachers here yesterday. You know, just be Lakota. Start at the beginning. Daycare, Head Start, grade school, all the way up. Even in our politics, be Lakota, be a good relative, have respect. All those things, you have to actually do it. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. I'm going to come out to the audience with the microphone in just a minute and make some of you share. The question on the table is, in 2 minutes, can you share one success that your organization has had in the past year? Something that would build up the collective that we have here, all of us pushing towards this vision of having excellent education here on Rosebud. So we got a couple more here, and then I'm going to come out into the audience. So prepare something quick, because we have another speaker after us.
At Woglakapi, we've been providing supervision for licensure for our therapists and for counselors at the Todd County School District. And this year, just recently, 3 of my therapists have become billable, so will be reimbursed for their services. They've attained their LPC, and they have an approved plan to attain the MH part. It used to be you had to be LPC MH to be billable. And we kind of fought that with the state. Every place we went, we said, why is it our people have to have that and private nonprofits have to have that? But the state's core agencies, you can bill with a bachelor's degree. So we've been asking them over and over the last few years. Well, the governor, before he left, he changed that regulation. So now you can bill if you're LPC with an approved plan to get the MH. And so that means 3 of my people are billable. There's a counselor at St. Francis Indian School that came through our program, and he's going to be billable if he decides to take on the MH part. And there's 4 counselors at Todd County in the elementary and middle school that have their LPC now, and if they're continuing for their MH, they can also be billable. And so for us, for our program that provides a good portion of sustainability for Tiwahe-Glukinippi to continue after the grant when it's over in another 1.5 years. And that'll at least pay the therapist salaries. And it's at the schools, it could also pay the salaries for the counselors, or at least a good portion of it. So that's a huge step. We're just really happy that we've come that far, and we're just going to continue on it until we get everybody billable. Thank you.
Congratulations, that's really awesome.
One thing that we did as Rosebud is we worked with 3 other tribes initially, and we purchased some land in the middle of the Black Hills. And since we purchased that, we've been successful in putting that land into trust, which is something that nobody said we could do, putting land in trust off our reservation, but it's done. But what's even more exciting for Rosebud is that piece of land in the middle of Black Hills is under our jurisdiction. Whenever there's an offense that's up there, happens up there, they use our law and order code, they use our police force. Our park rangers have total jurisdiction up there. So I think that's pretty amazing that was able to happen. Thank you.
Cool, thank you.
The organizational success that I would offer is the fact that SGU's application was approved to approach accreditation through the World Indigenous Nations Higher Education Consortium. We've heard Lionel talk about the WINHEC organization and how Santeglishka University and his leadership established this international audience and organization. Lionel and Deb Bordeaux and I, we had the privilege 2 summers back to go to the World Indigenous Peoples Conference in Education, and 6,000 people from around the world, Indigenous people coming together. And it isn't until you see that you realize the impact of unification of people from around the world coming together, talking about the same issues. Do I dare say that we're got some longevity in our efforts, because some places in the world are just getting started, where we were way back in the 60s or even in the 70s. But it's just, that international audience is going to be awesome. It's going to have far-reaching impact. They're ringing on his phone, my phone. People want to come here to the Rosebud and hear what you folks are hearing today. That's very inspirational. And so it ain't just about the Rosebud. It's around the world. And we'll continue to see the continued development and rise of our international presence in education, and it's going to be an awesome ride. Thank you.
Thank you, it's awesome.
One of the things that I really appreciated this past year was having an opportunity to speak to all of our regional tribal presidents and several council people about developing a partnership to pull together to have future discussions addressing the strengthening of our tribal nations within the Great Plains area. I felt I was well received and a message was well received, and to towards the future, it'll be a matter of going ahead and sitting down and providing sponsorships in conjunction with our elected leaders in the area to begin developing plans of action all across our 5 state areas where the Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota all live. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, but before we wrap this up, just because it's just inspiring to hear all the good work people are doing, so going to come out here and see if there's anyone back here that has something to share. And Dr. Green, we're going to make you go up in a minute and share separately about WinHec. But is there anyone over here that would like to share a success from this year? Except for Rod getting Rod Bordeaux would never brag on himself, but got great reviews from his class this year, and I know because I looked over them. 100% of students said they loved it. Jim, make you talk. So the question on the board is one major success from the past year that would be valuable to share with the collective here working towards education on Rosebud.
Everybody, Jim Curran from Teach for America. Happy to be here today. One thing I'm really proud of, we've got 2 of our second-year teachers finishing up right now are tribal members, our Sichangu, Lakota, and that's about 10% of our second-year teaching force here statewide. And Jenna Gray was Teacher of the Year for St. Francis Middle School last year. And so that's a big priority of ours to recruit more Native teachers in to Teach for America and to see a couple of them finish successfully this year, one of them as Teacher of the Year last year, who's also a Sinte graduate. I feel really proud of that. Thanks.
Thank you, Jim. Anyone else over here would like to share something? Ben?
Thank you. Yuha chantoashdan pitchus up. I'm just here, I've been here just a short while now, and I'm working with Lakota Studies to develop the language program, Lakota language program, and we're in the process, about a 2.5 year process of getting accreditation from WinHec, I believe. And basically that's what we're doing. So we're trying to make our classes effective so that the language that we teach, the students will actually speak Lakota. You know, that's, it's an attainable goal. And I think Indigneous can certainly be a leader in that respect, where we start producing people who actually come out of the courses and out of the programs speaking the language. That's our effort, you know, the bottom line. So basically that's what I'm involved in, and happy to be here. Thank you. Pilamaya.
Thank you for sharing. Make my way around here. Make eye contact with me if you want to share something. Debbie, is that eye contact? No. Dr. Crawford, do you have anything you'd like to, any successes from this year? He says there's more work to be done before any successes happen. Okay, I think I just want to take a second. This is going to wrap up our conversation. I just want to thank everyone for taking their time out of their day to come and share with us. And hopefully this is was beneficial, hearing the different things people are working on and the different successes people have had, and hopefully open up some doors of communication between the different organizations that are working here. That's going to be it for our part. I think I'm going to turn it over to Phil now. So thank you very much.
So we're getting close to the end of the day, but there's a few more presentations that I want to hear about. Again, the Tribal Education Department's here, and I'd like to invite them to talk about the what I think is a great development, and that's the updating of the Tribal Education Code here as we talk about accreditation, teacher certification, cultural proficiency in the language and cultural education in general, there's some major potential developments that are shaping up. So Cindy, I'll give you some time to think about that. But Dr. Green, you want to come on up? We talked about the WinHEC accreditation, and Ben alluded to the fact that we're stepping back and revisiting, well, not revisiting, looking hard at where we're at today in terms of our mission to not only preserve but to advance Lakota language and culture. And in part, it's kind of, we've had some grumbling in part because of the change, and you heard Roger Bordeaux talk about human behavior would change, but we really had no choice. That work we were doing, while in one generation, at one time of the colleges or universities' work, we were stepping forward and fulfilling that mission. And as we're learning now that, especially with the younger generation coming up, we need to do some things differently. And so the WinHEC accreditation process is going to allow us to address that. And we are, like I said, collectively working. Now is the big word I heard yesterday, is we got to come together collectively and agree to disagree, but we need to move forward. And again, I think the world's attention is on us. And you know, coming out of that conference in Toronto, right off the get-go, we made a contact, and President Bordeaux has made it very clear we need to reconnect with the horses again, and we were able to find a donor that's donated 7 horses to start our horse ranch, and they have a very unique background. So we're working on that effort, and then again, the bigger picture of really helping us think out of the box. And as we talk about teaching and learning, we're going to go through a very interesting experience, and I'll have Dr. Jim touch base with that.
Yuha, chante washte na peo chius papalo. I remember when I first heard Dave Long use that instead of the standard one, I thought, oh, chius papalo, but I always wanted to try it, so there it is. I don't want to bore you either, because I know what I've learned is that when you get a chance to present something, it's for your own clarification usually. You're working on things that make sense. Other people don't necessarily have that interest. But I will present just briefly on SGU is going through 2 accreditations, and it's good to have a sense of how they're different, perhaps. The standard accreditation, Higher Learning Commission, pretty much asks a college, including a tribal college, show us how you're the same as everybody else. You do teaching, learning, degrees. It's a little bit like maybe car manufacturers. You have Toyotas and Fords and Chevys and Hyundais and all kinds, but HLC says, yeah, you can be different up to a point, but if you're a college, you have to have teaching and you have to have degrees and graduation. And that's been okay. That's important to learn how to do that well. But now they're getting to the point where they're asking you, now, we want to see how you put your transmission together. We want to see how you put your wheels on. And it's getting to the point where they're examining things that a person in a college might do differently based on, as Lionel says, the different needs and goals and objectives. But so the other accrediting agency is the World Indigenous Nations Higher Ed Consortium, and they're asking, how are you different, not how are you the same? How are you different from the rest of these colleges? How are you indigenous? So on the one hand, it's easy for SGU to qualify. And they put in an application in August and easily qualified. But the qualification is just to become eligible. Now we have to show, in fact, how our teaching and learning is different, specifically indigenous. And that's not quite as easy. It's not enough to have a Lakota Studies department. So one thing we've done is we've developed a center, or an institute for indigenous teaching along with Lakota Studies. So like, you know, Ben mentioned, we can focus things. It's on how the teaching occurs. So let me just briefly give you the four things that this WINHEC Indigenous Accreditation is looking at when they come to visit. We have this spring, next summer, and fall to develop these new initiatives, then to write up our progress and ask them to come visit and assess us probably a year and a half from now. Here's the four things that we've said and they've said they'll be looking at. First one is the teaching. What's our teaching model? Does a college base its instruction, that is the classroom, on traditional Lakota child-raising practices? What would that mean? What's the teaching and learning that goes on in a traditional family? So that you're not teacher-centered. That's what we're saying. The kids are related to exploring and learning, and the adult's role, if they intervene, is to tell a story which doesn't teach, gives you a chance to explore and to learn, or simply to watch what you're doing and maybe set up opportunities for you to do more. So you're relating to learning. Most colleges don't do that. They relate the students to a teacher. A textbook is a form of a teacher. So we have to reassess what we're doing in our classrooms, and we're beginning meetings this next month to do that. So that's the first one. There's a college's teaching model based on traditional Lakota child-raising practices, and to take that seriously. Second one, as Ben mentioned, is do the college's Lakota language classes follow the usual approach that teaches students about language and its structures, or does the college require instructors to get students actively speaking and communicating in Lakota? We talked a little bit about that yesterday, how the college is taking a stand on the proficiency tests. As you know, if you want to teach in the K-12 system, the college has to approve, you have to pass a proficiency test and take a methods course through the college. And it's been kind of a give and take. It's really challenging for someone to tell someone, you are or are not proficient. What does that mean? But since we have so many second language learners who are asking to teach in the schools, we feel it's our responsibility to define that proficiency test more closely as, can you carry on a conversation out of the blue? Not about complicated things, but about the simple kinds of things that a 4 or 5-year-old can talk about. I know 4 or 5 sounds pretty young for a teacher, but a first language speaker in English or Lakota can say a lot. And we're expecting our second language learners to be able to do that. So the proficiency test will be in Lakota, not in English. No translation. We're not concerned about your ability to translate. When you're teaching, we don't want you to translate. So anyway, so that's one of the things we're doing, and we want to have some discussion about that. The third thing they're going to be looking at, and we're beginning to discuss it, is does the college promote an indigenous value of ongoing development and self-responsibility in our students? Or do they prioritize that more external sense and really look at final summative grading assessments? So it's what they call formative assessment. You constantly are ongoing and evaluating how things are going, and let the student do more self-assessment and responsibility rather than the teacher takes the primary role and I'll judge how far you've gotten. So a more traditional way respects the fact that there's always development possible. There's all kinds of interventions that go on, but we want to prioritize formative assessment over summative. And how do we do that? That's going to be part of our discussions. And finally, just the curriculum itself. This is the fourth thing for WINHEC. Most colleges really prioritize mastering the subject. That's what your degree is about. It's kind of a horizontal development. You start here and you learn and you develop and you understand and you accomplish the mastery of that subject, history or business or human services, criminal justice. But what we're saying, and we're following in some ways Ben's indication here, there's a vertical dimension to a Lakota education. There's the identity piece, and there's a history piece, and there's a culture piece. And that doesn't necessarily come in even if you take Lakota studies courses. It's an identity piece. So what we're saying is we want to not concentrate primarily on mastering the subject, but while you're learning, we want to do it in such a way to produce suspicious, critical-minded students. Why suspicious? After 200 years of American history, wouldn't you want to be suspicious? You want to be able to really look at documents and laws and everything else and be critical of where they came from and what they're intending to do. Critical students capable of identifying individual and group bias, since people experience it every day, capable of identifying it, including in online sources, but still interested and able to promote dialogue and diversity. Woglakapi. So it's a shift. It's a subtle one, but it's a challenging one. And I guess finally, since I remember Tribal Ed is here, in that course of revising Tribal Ed Code, we think it can be helpful if in dealing with these outside accrediting sources, if we want to build a model of education for K-12 that's based on tribal students and tribal education, instead of asking for permission and constantly being turned down from superintendents, where's Roger, and other people, if we can get something embedded in tribal code, then you've got a federal, you're preempting the state. It's a strategy that other people have used successfully. If you can preempt the state where they have no authority, and you're stating in tribal code and other places, this is what the college or educators on the reservation are required to do, we have to do it, and we have a hand in defining that, then we go ahead and do it, and they try to say you can't do it, they may have no authority to say that. So it's a strategy that we're hoping the Institute for Indigenous Teaching and Lakota Studies can eventually build models of K-12 ed and get into the discussions with the local superintendents and schools to have a genuine dialogue. As it is, we can present ideas and so on, but we have to have something recognized, I think, and that's kind of what our future goal is. So we hope the WINHEC accreditation gives us a better sense of ourselves. And as Lionel says, that next chapter, it's not just being eligible anymore, it's actually showing, in fact, how our teaching and learning is genuinely higher educational, but also genuinely tribal and indigenous. So, thank you.
As you heard, we have the Rosebud Sioux Tribal Education Department. So Cindy, we can call you up here. And as an introduction here, I was fortunate to follow Lionel Bordeaux into the national education circles. And 25 years ago, I served as the president of the National Education Association. It just dawned on me, that was a long time ago. During that time, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act was being reauthorized. And we had become aware of some of the work being done by tribes to establish a tribal education code, of reclaiming sovereignty over education. And that tribal education code became an important piece. And Sherry Redall served as the director of the Tribal Education Department. We worked with the Native American Rights Fund and were successful in putting a code together. With that federal legislation I was alluding to, though, we literally inserted the term tribal education departments. And it took almost 25 years for the feds, while it was authorized, to provide funding. It's only been recently that the BIE, Bureau of Indian Education, has provided grants to tribes to begin looking at this whole arena of tribal education and tribal education codes and tribal education departments. Through Cindy's efforts and others, the Rosebud was successful in getting a grant to once again revisit the Tribal Education Code, update it, and we'll ask Cindy here to give us an update because it has some pretty profound implications for the work that we're looking at in this next chapter. Cindy Young, the Director of the Rosebud Sioux Tribe Education Department.
Okay, I didn't prepare something as well as Jim did, but I'm going to give you an update on the ed code. We are, most of the sections are finished, and we just need to, most of our sections are pretty much completed. We just have a few things that we want to tidy up, and I just was talking to Jim on my way up here for the section on accreditation, and Roger talked about that COSA, that Commission on School Accreditation, that we took from his ACTS, what is it called, his little ACTS group, where they tried to do something with Indian country across America, but we took what they did with the Great Plains Tribal Ed Directors, and we put together that COSA manual that we gave to Jim and Phil and whoever else was wanting a copy of that. And so each tribe would customize it to their needs, and so we need to work a little bit closer with SGU on that, with Cheryl and Jim. I talked to Jim if we could get together and meet in the next 2 weeks, because we want to be getting that code done. It's pretty much done and be ready for a read by the education committee, hopefully in about a month, I'm hoping. But there's a couple things we want to tidy up, and one of them is that section with the college. And we did meet with Jim and Phil on that briefly, and we never followed up. It's been, what, 3 months, 4 months? And then the other section that we did that were completed, and then we had a computer crash and didn't have a good backup system in our old building, is the, I found out there's lots of, what do they call those? Surges in Rosebud. I learned that from the old building, used to be the old pump house next to us, and we blow out our computers and stuff. And even though they're on those surge protectors, it still knocked out our big heavy duty computer that had all the work that Lydia Whirlwind Soldier did for us, and it was completed, and she's been working on it since it crashed back in April. And so she let me know, I'm not doing this again. So she's done now, and so we just need to do an edit and then a publish. That's going to be the cultural standards that are in alignment with the state and the federal education system, the Common Core, and of course they're always updating and changing things. So those are completed, and those are our cultural standards that were taken straight out from the ed code, the existing ed code, on how to be focusing on, and it's not language. We haven't done anything with language. We turned that little initiative that President Bordeaux started about 9 years ago, and we gave that to the daycare so they could do the immersion program. So we don't have language per se, other than what the college did, and the orthography that we did complete with SGU staff, language department staff, Albert, Victor, who else was in that department? Albert and Victor and Francis, and Ivan was working for me at that time, Ivan Sharpfish, and we got that all completed. Dwayne, Ione, and Carmen White Hat, or Carmen Eagle Pipe. I went to school with her, so I know her as White Pipe, or White Hat. Now she's White Piped. Eagle Pipe. So that's been completed, and that's as a guide. We explain that, they use it as a guide, and I see Sage left, but Todd County hired some new people that learned through the LLC, the Lakota Language Consortium out of wherever they come out of, Indiana. So they were asking for a waiver, and so we approved a waiver for Todd County to use with their new instructor that they have. And I've convinced the education committee that we need to stick with that orthography, because that's a guide for us for the future. When we're all gone, there's still something there that can be used to learn our language. And it's, we're more interested in, well, I am as a director, is immersion. We need to start we did a trial immersion with Carmen. We didn't have the funds to continue it or the support, so that grant went to the child care, because they have the population there. We didn't have the population, and so we turned it over to them to get something going there. So I missed Gail yesterday. I didn't know, I haven't talked to her lately about that program. Other portions of the ed code, the accreditation, the cultural standards, the orthography, and then we kind of added some stronger language in there on attendance, school attendance, and abuse reporting, because we had some incidents with our schools in the past couple years where they follow what the tribe has, and the tribe doesn't have a protocol per se. So that's something that we're working on, and there's a grant that the tribe is working on updating the children's code. And so we met with some of those people last week that we need to beef up that area to help the schools there and help our children, of course. And then that section is the truancy section, the truancy and intervention section, and we don't really have anything that strong as well in the law and order code. So what we're finding as we're updating the ed code is that the law and order code needs to be updated, and I think they hired Janet Routson to do that, to work on sections of it. And there are lots of sections, and my only concern is whatever affects our children, and so that's quite a bit. And we were trying to beef up that section last week with our couple ed committee members and our team at our office, and we just discovered that we have to get with law and order code. We have to get with people that are working on that law and order code and get that tightened up right there, because they're the enforcers. And that's with our truancy too, and I think, Sherry, you probably figured that out a long time ago, is our truancy is not very strong because the law and order code doesn't address anything that's helpful or anything that's going to, I don't know, there's a big controversy about that. Do we want to put our parents in jail, or do we want them to be parents? You know what it boils down to. So that's something that the law enforcement it's not a priority for them, because they have much other bigger things to worry about out on call. And so that was a little bit frustrating for us, and we already knew that, but nothing has changed for that. So what we did to that section to help out is to do a Woglakota section in there on what we expect, kind of what some of the stuff that Jim was talking about, and that really caught my ear when I was listening, is that section on Woglakota within that truancy section, so we can give some ideas and information to the schools when they come to that section, which they should be working on anyway. And that's a way to, instead of punishing them, we're trying to teach them what a good relative is and what they should be doing. And then the other addition, we added like 3 things onto that, and we did meet with Jim and Phil to talk about the college, what parts of the college, but we need to finish that part up on how we're going to work together with the accreditation. And we're not touching teacher certification at this time. I got you might have seen me be occupied there for a little bit. My office sending me some stuff, but prior to that, a message was sent to me that we are watering down our teacher certification at St. Francis Indian School. So I had to ask Roger when he was sitting back there if that's true, and he said, no, it's not. And I'm like, I hope not, but that was just a rumor that was flying around from another tribe that sent me a text, and so that is not true. We are going to depend and work closely with SGU on teacher certification, because the code is just a manual that says this is what we want for our students, and our teachers need to be able to do all these different things so that they could provide the best quality, culturally based education that we could have for our children. And so we depend on, we don't do the work ourselves, but the other people, the outside organizations help us do that work, like the Law and Order Code and different other programs within the tribe and the college. We look to the college to help us in those areas that other programs cannot do. You guys are the ones that take the lead for that, and we want to establish some kind of a little protocol or a system on how we're going to do that. So we are going to try to be done with that in another month or so and get it to the education committee, so then it can go to the next committee that it goes to is the governmental affairs, and then it will go on to council, because it's an amendment. And then we are going to start working on a procedural manual or a guidebook or a how-to for dummies book, I call it, but a procedural manual on how to understand and implement the code. And that's always been the problem, I think, is how to implement this code. And so that's the next section, and we haven't put anything formally on paper, but it's all in our notes in our heads when we talk, when we've been talking all through this, working on the ed code. And it's been taking a while because we contracted with NARF again, and we were kind of put on the back burner a few times because of issues that were more important across Indian country, like the water and the fights that they were doing, because we work with Malady, and she would get assigned to those kinds of things and have to do hearings and testimony or whatever, all that. I wanted to be a lawyer in middle school. I don't want to anymore after working with lawyers over the years. Got to do a lot of reading. I guess that's about it. I don't know if you guys have any more questions, but our office provides the different services, and I didn't bring a brochure last night. Dalla from our office set up a booth and brought all our brochures and everything, and I didn't get to grab them from her today. But we have, our brochure will show you all the services that we do and how we try to make sure our kids are in school with our truancy program. Our infants and toddlers is to identify our kids and get them into service so that they can transition into kindergarten and have the services they need. And then of course our higher ed program, we never get enough money. We share that grant with Sinte, and it's never enough for either one of us. And with this federal shutdown, it was kind of getting scary with the voc ed grant, worrying about those grants. And our higher ed money, we don't receive until March, usually February or March, and I don't know with this shutdown what's going to happen. I feel for Pine Ridge because they spend all their money. We always reserve a chunk of money. I was told to do that by Jim White because the tribe would always carry us and they couldn't carry us anymore, so we had to reserve our, and I don't know how you guys are at the college with yours, but I know my son is enrolled in Pine Ridge, and when he was going to school, it was like they spend all their money every semester, so they only have money to pay their staff in between. So with the shutdown, it's a little bit scary for some of those programs. I guess that's all I have. I talked already about our higher ed partnerships. And then our consultation, I'll just mention we worked really hard with the Great Plains TEDs. We meet once a month and on a different reservation. If it's too hard for us to travel to another reservation, we all take turns. And Rosebud's coming up. I think I missed mine and I have to reschedule it, but otherwise we meet in Pier, and we try to all work on the same page and support each other all at the federal level. And the work that we're doing to try to everybody work on the same thing. And we are working on our standards. Rosemary had to leave because she's doing PD at St. Francis in the after school, so she had to get going, but we are working on standards in St. Francis. We're working with St. Francis on a project of, and that's where I need to sit down on standards, and that's where I do need to sit with Cheryl Medeiros, and maybe Jim could sit in on that. And I don't know if this other Deb, we always get mixed up with our Debs. Sometimes she gets our checks from the tribe, but she's honest and she sends them back. But that's a collaboration that we're doing there, is trying to look at a training on how to help our teachers teach, because these young people that come out of, these new teachers that come out don't always have the training or the experiences to work with our native populations and in rural areas. So we're kind of going to focus on how to help our teachers be better teachers. And the standard work is already there. We're already forced to use what the federal BIE and the state does, and so we don't want to reinvent the wheel, but we already did our work with the cultural portion of that. So just teaching our teachers how to merge the two together. And so Lydia's gonna start on the training portion of her work, and then she'll be done with her work, and then it will be up to that code to help us, or the partnerships that we have with our schools. And of course, St. Francis is our tribal school, so we need to focus on helping them do a better job, because it's our kids that we are concerned about. But we do work very close with Todd County, because the majority of our kids go to Todd County. So that's where our population is. And then Winter, White River, we're working with White River again. And Winter has to work with us, even though that consent decree is over. They've agreed to do that for X amount of years, so we're happy that we're able to keep that partnership going for the sake of our children. And that's all I have. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, that's where I started to talk about, and then I started somewhere else. That consultation process, that was completed. We worked, the Great Plains people worked TED groups and worked with Mato Standing High when he was in that position. He left that position. They haven't hired anybody to replace him yet, and they're moving that office into the Tribal Relations office. That's all we know. We're kind of looking into that. But we got that. That was one of the things that Mato wanted to get done before he left, was to get that consultation in place so that the tribes would have something to use to work with the state. And we developed our own tribal consultation for the Rosebud Sioux tribe, and it's finished. We just need to have it reviewed one more time before it goes to Ed Committee. And I don't know if anybody's interested in that. Phil or Jim or Cheryl, you can call. I think we need to just set up a meeting and meet with you guys in the next week or two and go over those two different things. What? Let's meet. Could we meet somewhere away from here? Yeah, we need to meet because he's done a lot of work, and he's helped us, all the tribes, the Great Plains, the TEDs from the Great Plains. We've all got, I think we're ahead of them, Rosebud, so we want to hurry up and get ours done. We'll be the first one to have ours done, but with the exception of Pine Ridge, who has an overall consultation with the federal government. But our consultation is just going to be with education. And then we met with someone from the tribe last week and told them they should look at the bigger picture for the tribe, and we're just working on education. So we'll see what happens with that, if she's going to do that or not. And then I guess we don't know any more than you guys know about what's going to happen. They haven't hired anybody. They hired Ben Jones, is it Dr. Ben Jones, to be the secretary to replace Melody Shop, Dr. Shop. I think it's permanent. It was Noam made that nomination, and then also moved that office into Tribal Relations, and we're looking into that because there's legislation that says it's supposed to be a standalone office. I don't know if you had anything on that when you were in my position, but I haven't heard anything over the years, but we just found that out a couple weeks ago. So we have mixed feelings about that. It's going to be watered down.
And bringing forth that standalone office perspective, so she did it, Governor Noel did it by legislature or executive order.
She did it by executive order, yeah. Yeah, I didn't go to that last meeting. Yeah, it was in the act. Yeah, our Deb Bordeaux, or the Pine Ridge Deb Bordeaux that works for our office is the one that's working with the ed code and probably knows more, but I meet with her all the time on this, and we work with Melody about once a week or every other week over the phone. She's looking into that right now, that act, and getting something together so that we could talk about that at the Education Committee meeting next week or in 2 weeks. Or is it next week? Next week, I'm getting mixed up with my dates. So we probably won't have anything that soon, but Dr. Johnson from the Sistine Wahpeton, she was a former superintendent, so she's really into her position, and her and Deb are looking into all that. And I didn't go to the Great Plains TED meeting last week in Huron because I was scared of the big storm that was supposed to come, plus I had other things that I was working on in my office. I couldn't go. So anyway, we just want to work close with you guys in the next month to get this done, because it's pretty much done except for a few little things we need to talk about. Yeah, she's always working on something, and we all just work, whatever they work on, they present to us, and then we all start working on it for our own tribe. We haven't done that yet. I don't know, I didn't go to the last meeting, so I'll have to ask Deb. But because she was a former teacher and a superintendent, and she's fresh, she's always working, looking for everything that she wants done for tribal control of education. Our goal is to have tribal control of education of our children and teach them everything they need to know so that they will lead our tribe in the future. Okay, that's it.
My last question dealt with the idea of a template for a reservation-based tribal education report card. And we've heard President Bordeaux talk about an Indian education blueprint. Well, this blueprint would match against the assessment and the outcomes of our work. And Dr. Sherry Johnson, who's the director of Assistant Wapton Tribal Education Department, has been very active in developing that. So we're kind of looking at that and seeing how that might shape up in terms of this next chapter. I'm going to call on President Bordeaux for the final remarks, but we're wrapping up the second day. Tonight, we do have the Indigenous film presentation, Blood Mary, which is focused on the adoption era of Native children and the trauma that came after that, and the healing that we're trying to shape and taking care of ourselves in terms of that trauma. Tomorrow we got a busy day. You thought today was busy. We're hump week, so to speak. Wednesday, January 30th, dealing with the broad categories of community development, health, housing, and transportation. But we'll start the morning on community development. We have a section on family, youth, and elders. Health is a big concern, as we all know. Housing, energy, forestry, and probably to some degree land use, and how we look at the 1 million acres that the Rosebud Sioux tribe sits on, and looking at how that can contribute to some housing solutions. We've been talking in a circle from building trades to the tribal forestry program to our tribal housing authority about seriously getting some collaborations put together and put our resources together and address tribal housing. And again, renewable energy is a huge issue. I talked yesterday about the university putting together its master facilities plan. We cannot continue to build. We have to sustain ourselves, and that utility cost is raising eyebrows. And so we need to look at the future and see what kind of resources we have for renewable energy. And then the last topic for tomorrow will be transportation, and that's day 3. So we appreciate your time. We invite you to come back for any and all of this. Again, extend our appreciation to Jonah Hacker and the SGU Environmental Science crew for getting everything set up. Roger and Stormy, thank you again for you taking us into cyberspace. And they just sent me a little deal here. And I see where Twin Cities, North Mississippi, San Antonio, Texas, Peekskill, New York, Phoenix, Arizona, Cherokee, Tahlequah, Oklahoma. People are listening to us, folks. People are very interested in the work that we're talking about doing and looking at the future. And Roger can tell us how many hits we're getting, but I would probably offer that as a last thought about education. And we talked about teaching and learning. Teacher certification is important, but what's the place of technology? Our kids and grandkids are going up with the technology, and we can lament all we want from a different generation about its use in the classroom, but it's here, and we all know it. And so we've been having an active discussion about technology. We had a Trojan virus that hit the institution just when I thought we had pretty well invested in some good infrastructure. When a Trojan virus hits you and takes you down your knees for 4 weeks, And Cindy talked about power surges, and it's a huge area. It's a huge area, but I'm just going to say that technology is not going to go away. It changes about every 6 months, and our young people are becoming very adept. And as teachers, if we don't have a plan, I guarantee you, our young people and our learners will come up with that plan. And it'll be focused on application and accessing what's out there to educate themselves. So with that, we might have one last event here. But I'll let President Bordeaux wrap this up. Day 2 of the 49th Annual SGU Forums, Founders Week Forum here at Antelope Campus. Thank you for your time. Pilamalo.
Thank you, Phil. Yeah, it's been another beautiful day. Weather's been nice out there. Makes us bundle up and think hard and think smart. Think of our people when they lived over the years without the benefit of a lot of the conveniences today. I know a lot of people say, oh, buffalo skins were warm, teepees were warm. Well, I'm sure, you know, they provided comfort, but I just, when I think of what our young ones and what our old ones went through moving a camp and coming across wood and not having an axe to cut that wood, not always having the kindling to get fire started. Those had to have been tough times. But that's what our people survived with. But likewise, today, in moving ahead, as educators, we're facing tough times. Tough times in being called upon to be visionaries and to talk about the things that need to be done to strengthen and create ownership of our educational system. Those are tough ones, mentally and emotionally. When we think about developing the authority to get into some of these new areas, to look at the prospect of developing a new Indian Education Act, a new Tribal Self-Determination Act, to address the prophecies and the visions that we're thinking about. Those are tough ones. But really, who's being called in the forefront to address those? For the most part, educators, because education permeates all aspects of who we are. That's why really it's been a lot of fun being SGU president all these years. But it's particularly been a joy because of people like yourself. We've had incredible staff, leadership that we've had since our founders inaugurated this institution. The prayers and ceremony that our people have had, that our visionaries have had, people who've been in the spirit world for millennium, for centuries, for decades. Seemingly every month, a friend, a relative, somebody goes to the spirit world. one often wonders, you know, we think about the people that we grew up with here, knowing that 99% of them, you know, are in the spirit world. But I know that they continue to surround us and give us good thoughts, good recommendations, and help us develop and stay strong so that we too can carry out the visions of our families who are in a spirit world. We remember them, what they said. But those are the people that will help us develop what we need, what we're hearing today, what we'll hear the rest of the time that we're with education. And I thank each and every one of you for selecting the industry of education. Without it, we'd be in a difficult time. I know there are differences, but together, really, we're guided by the one thing: to prepare strong future generations and to be the teacher of that generation or 2 generations behind us. But when we look at future of SGU, we're in good hands, really good hands. We're strong, we're well noted, we're well disciplined, and we're going to do our part, and we've been doing our part. So I thank each and every one of you for being here and for being who you are. And one day we'll have doctorates here. We'll have an Indian education strategic plan across the country, globally. These all await us. And to our YouTube listeners, Onkiapo, help us. Takuchala echunk unktahechi, naktekchi hechi, onkila zata agya najipo. What it is that we've been asked to do and destined to do. Stand with us. To our many YouTube supporters throughout the world, as of yesterday, we had over 900,000 hits. 900,000 people tuned in at one time or another. What's happening here? That's a long way away, and a lot of people. To think you might double that again. So as of now, very well, 2, 3, 4 million people could have heard in our corner somewhere globally. That's powerful, very strong, and appreciate what we're doing. And we thank them for their support, for their willingness to turn on that tube and press that appropriate button so that they can come in here and be with us. Wastelo. Awesome. And with that, we're going to turn it over one last 6.5 minutes. Way back in the early 1900s, an Apache scholar by the name of Carlos Montezuma gave a talk and was very high on developing a national tribal university. Over 100 years ago, 1912, Ohio State University of Woglakapi. And he advocated for a national tribal university. A lot of times you've heard me talk about, what's the future of this institution? In 1973, I gave a talk where we could have a national tribal university flavor and be located in the Black Hills. Rapid City Journal picked up on it, and they ran and printed it. Sometime later, Senator Dan Inouye, Democrat, Hawaii, asked me about it. He said that was something that was always on his mind. Why not a national tribal university? But he called it an American Indian University. We asked him to do a video in support of that. And we had this going good until 9/11 come along in New York. And we put it on the back burner. And it's been there ever since. Somewhere it needs to be activated. And we have that opportunity here if we want SGU to incorporate something of that magnitude. With online, with virtual, it is doable. But let Senator Inouye, let him talk about it.
President Lionel Bordeaux has asked me to share my thoughts with you on the concept of a university that would serve not only Native America, but perhaps a larger universe of indigenous peoples. My interest in the establishment of such a university has its origins in something that happened when I first assumed the chairmanship of the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs about 14 years ago. It was appropriations time, and we were trying to secure a high level of funding for the tribal colleges, so I asked the committee staff to provide me with some comparisons in the funding that is made available to other colleges. They looked at other federally chartered institutions as a basis of comparison, and we learned, for example, that Harvard University, which is a federally chartered university that serves African Americans, was receiving more than $13,000 per student in federal funding. At that time, the tribally controlled community colleges were receiving less than $1,700 per student, 13,000 versus 1,700. Gallaudet University, a federally chartered university that serves the hearing impaired and deaf students, was receiving about $8,000 per student. I was frankly shocked to learn of these disparities in funding, particularly in the light of the United States trust relationship with Indian nations. After that, I started asking around, why isn't there a university that serves the first citizens of America? Shouldn't there be a university that would address the many educational needs of Indian country? I must say I was a little surprised at some of the reactions my questions elicited. Some people seem very cautious about establishing universities to serve Native America. Perhaps some thought that it might compete with or undermine the tribal colleges whose funding was already meager. But I think that over time, more people in Indian country have revisited the concept of a university and are more receptive to least discussing the idea. As we learn more about the capacities of our growing technologies, such as distance learning, it makes it possible to consider a university that might begin as a university without walls. That is, all of the tribal colleges, and indeed other universities that have program initiatives that are designed to serve Indian country, could become a part of a university without walls, or put another way, a university without geographic limitations in terms of serving indigenous people. Each could be a component without losing their own unique identities or their funding. Each institution has an important role to play and needs that it is currently serving. I don't think we would want to do anything in any way to jeopardize those important programs and institutions and the native people they serve. Nor would we want to duplicate what is already being done in Indian country. But we have solid evidence of the critical role that tribal colleges and universities have played in bringing higher education into the lives of native people who would not otherwise have the means of securing access to higher education opportunities. It seems to me only logical that we would want to build on the strong foundation. Why shouldn't there be a university that has a law school and a medical school and a school of social work where native people can learn in an environment that is respectful of and sensitive to their cultures and their traditions, their values and their unique histories? Personally, I think it is time we move these discussions forward. In the coming year, I'm hoping that those who are interested in developing this concept further might come together to work with me and the committee staff in exploring whether to develop a bill that could be introduced in the Congress to establish a university to serve the native people of this land, the first Americans. Your ancestors gave millions of acres of land to this country, and you and your forebears have served in the armed forces of this nation in numbers far in excess of any other ethnic group on a per capita basis. You have paid your dues. In my view, the least America can do for you is to establish a university that is developed by Native people to serve Native people so that your children and your grandchildren and generations to come might have the educational opportunities that others in this country have enjoyed for so long. Aloha.
This video is about 18 years old, so the figures are outdated. Today, instead of 1,700 as opposed to 13,000 for Howard University, they're probably getting 25 to 30,000 per student. We're getting 7,200 per student. So you can see legislatively and appropriation-wise, we have a long way to go. But that's one of the reasons I think, you know, that when we take a look at our 1.2 million acres of land and how we might have prayer and ceremony with our land and sit down in partnership with our land and the spirits, and what can we do educationally with the land that we have, where we can enhance student scholarship, student financial aid, raises for our staff, maintenance that Phil was talking about for our buildings. We can do that on our own homelands. But I know at some point, you know, another wave, another move needs to be made in DC as well as overseas to address financial security and resources for our institutions of higher learning. If I were to take a vote today, Haskell Tribal Nations would be my choice for a national tribal university. They're above the ground. It's easier to expand than it is to start new. But with virtual today, online, the prospects for partnerships with institutions that be willing to come in with us. I know it's something that, you know, is another option for other tribal colleges such as ourselves to address if we really wanted to go in that direction also. Those types of thoughts, you know, await us. But with that, closing, I want to thank each and every one of you for your support here, your attendance. I want to thank our cooks, TJ Marshall and Sam Yelligal, and as has been said, you know, our maintenance people and our security with Leo McCloskey, or Macaulay, and the many others who in some way have lent themselves to our planning and our organizing. I know Marlise has done a lot of work, Gina has done a lot of work in pulling the cultural side, the movies that we're having tonight. And I want to thank Travis Brolin Soldier for his many hours of what he put into it, as well as Maxine and others that have been doing the registration. And I want to give a shout to our CHRs, what they've done back there. So, and again, Roger and Pauline and our own SGU staff. We have a lot of work once this week is over, sitting back at the drawing board and beginning to pull not only this here, but all the information that we've secured over the years and the decades that we have written and that we have in our notes, and sit down, and it'll take some time, but to begin to pull together a document that gives us an updated vision and a strategic plan as to how to strengthen our nation in all areas. But partnerships is what it's going to take, because it's time that we pull together. There are some things that we cannot do as an institution of higher learning at SGU. We need the help of other partnerships, and that's why this week is critical. So when we're looking at overhauling really any country as a whole, starting with our own self, taking a look at all of our policies, taking a look at our legislation, updating what we need, it's going to require all the stakeholders to be at the table. And it's kind of like our spiritual leader from Iroquois, what's his name? Oren Lyons. Oren Lyons talked at the conference on people's education in Toronto. He said, if you're not at the table planning, you're on the menu. Very well stated. And that's where, you know, we need to have everybody at the table, especially our young ones. It was so gratifying today to see our young ones here. But we also need our veterans. Our veterans have a skill, they've had a purpose, they've been trained for it, they have discipline, and they have organization. And we need to have our veterans at the table, as well as our elected leaders, our community leaders, our parents, all of our relatives, and our treaty people. We need to bring our treaty people in, but also we need to have our spiritual leaders in attendance. We try to bring them all here this week, and I appreciated those who were able to come and to talk, especially yesterday that we heard. So we have a camaraderie with a lot of people and a tremendous intellect here in Sicangu country. And it behooves us to pull together to see what we can do for those generations to come. Pilama apelo. Thank you. You all stay warm. Love you. We'll see you tomorrow. Doksha. Wopila. Long live youth. Hasta luego.